It began innocently enough. On a scorching July morning, the sun blazed over a quiet suburban street lined with perfectly manicured lawns, identical beige houses, and mailbox flags standing at attention. Among them, a young couple had just unboxed a bright blue inflatable pool, the kind you could buy for $20 at any local store. It was small, unassuming, almost childish, but to them, it promised endless summer fun, splashing, and relief from the relentless heat. They carefully set it up in the backyard, filling it with cold water and floating a few inflatable toys for their kids. The air was filled with the sound of laughter and splashing, completely normal for a suburban neighborhood, or so they thought. Across the street, one neighbor noticed immediately. She was a woman whose reputation for scrutiny and control preceded her. She had earned the informal title of Neighborhood Karen. Her eyes narrowed as she stared at the bright blue pool, the corners of her mouth twitching with disapproval. Within hours, the first warning appeared. A crisp, white envelope was slipped under the young couple's door, emblazoned with the HOA logo and stamped with authority. The letter cited violation of community aesthetic standards and demanded the immediate removal of the inflatable pool. It was short, impersonal, and intimidating. The couple blinked in disbelief. Their backyard was private property, their pool harmless. And yet, this was the HOA's law, and it was clear the neighborhood Karen had made her move. It first. The couple tried to ignore it. Surely it was a minor oversight, a formality. But the next morning, a new letter arrived, more insistent this time, threatening fines if the pool was not removed within 72 hours. Social media groups for the neighborhood began buzzing, whispers spreading like wildfire. Photos of the pool circulated, and the couple began to notice neighbors peeking over fences, judging, and taking videos on their phones. As the days passed, the couple complied, but only partially. They deflated the pool slightly, thinking it would appear less offensive. Yet the HOA wasn't satisfied. Every day brought another notice, each more absurd than the last. A violation for unauthorized outdoor structures, another for distracting visual clutter, and even one accusing them of encouraging unsanctioned water activities. The couple's frustration grew, matched only by their disbelief at the petty intensity of the HOA's enforcement. Meanwhile, the neighborhood Karen escalated quietly but deliberately. She documented every infraction with precision, snapping photos and recording short videos of the pool. Every day she stood in her driveway, clipboard in hand, cataloging what she considered a rebellion against the community. She was meticulous, almost surgical, in her approach, making sure that nothing went unnoticed. It wasn't just the pool anymore. It had become a symbol of her authority, her ability to control the smallest aspects of other people's lives. The couple began to realize that the conflict was not just about a pool. It was about power, pride, and the absurd theater of suburban control. Each time they received a new notice, a tiny spark of defiance grew within them. They took photos of the letters, compiled videos of the pool being set up and deflated, and documented the garden from every angle. The HOA, and especially the neighborhood Karen, were creating the perfect storm, unaware that their obsession was being recorded, cataloged, and watched with growing amusement and disbelief by the couple. Tension spilled into subtle acts of retaliation. One morning, the pool was mysteriously filled with colorful rubber balls. Another day, someone left a stack of children's beach toys neatly arranged on the grass, as if to taunt the rigid rules. Every small act of defiance brought more letters, more frowning stares, and more surveillance from the neighborhood Karen. She became more aggressive, calling HOA meetings to discuss the pool problem, bringing it up at every gathering, insisting that a line had been crossed. Even the most neutral neighbors began taking sides. Some secretly admired the young couple's courage, while others sided with the HOA out of fear or habit. The tension transformed the street from a quiet, predictable suburban setting into a battlefield of passive-aggressive actions, secret recordings, and whispered gossip. Cameras started appearing, capturing the minutiae of the daily disputes, and social media chatter extended beyond the block, bringing the story to audiences far outside the small community. It all came to a head one sweltering afternoon when the young couple decided to finally make a small, symbolic stand. They filled the pool to its maximum capacity, positioned it directly in view of the HOA president's house, and set a small inflatable flamingo in the center. They stepped back, camera in hand, ready to document whatever happened next. The neighborhood Karen appeared minutes later, her expression a mix of horror and determination, clutching a clipboard like a weapon. The standoff was brief, tense, and completely silent. Yet every move was captured in high-definition video. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. The pool, small and inflatable, had ignited a war of wills that would escalate into fines, pranks, public embarrassment, and one of the most satisfying revenge plots the neighborhood had ever witnessed. Every letter, every complaint, every video was a move in a silent chess game, and the young couple was learning to play and win in ways the HOA could never anticipate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over perfectly trimmed hedges and concrete sidewalks, the street seemed calm again. But beneath the surface, tension simmered, and the war over the inflatable pool was far from over. Cameras were rolling, strategies were forming, and the neighborhood Karen had no idea just how spectacular the next chapter of this suburban saga would become. The morning after the standoff, the neighborhood felt like a powder keg. The inflatable pool, gleaming in the sun with its lone pink flamingo bobbing gently, had become a symbol of defiance. The young couple, now fully aware that they were the center of an escalating drama, moved deliberately and with quiet amusement. They had begun documenting every interaction with the HOA, the neighborhood Karen, and the increasingly opinionated neighbors, turning their backyard into both battlefield and stage. The HOA wasted no time. A formal notice arrived in a thick, official-looking envelope, this one marked urgent. The letter was laden with fines, citing the inflatable pool as a continued violation of HOA aesthetic policies and demanding payment within 7 days, or risk additional legal action. The amount was small enough to sting but not ruin, $300. But the couple knew this was just the opening salvo. The fines were less about money and more about intimidation, a tool to force compliance and assert the HOA's authority. The neighborhood Karen, emboldened by the support of the HOA, took matters into her own hands. She posted a flyer on the community bulletin board declaring the pool incident a serious breach of neighborhood standards. She snapped photos of the pool from every conceivable angle, labeling them with phrases like eyesore, safety hazard, and example of defiance. Her obsession was palpable, a relentless drive to assert dominance over a $20 inflatable. Every move the young couple made was scrutinized, analyzed, and criticized publicly, amplifying the tension to near absurdity. But the couple refused to buckle. They responded to the fines not with confrontation but with quiet defiance. They began subtle, harmless acts of mischief, knowing full well that they were being watched. A floating rubber duck mysteriously appeared in the pool each morning. A rainbow-colored beach ball was strategically placed to block the view from the neighbor's driveway. Every addition was innocent, playful, yet delivered a clear message. The pool was here to stay, and so was their spirit. The feud escalated when the neighborhood Karen took the conflict online. She posted photos of the pool on a local HOA Facebook group, accompanied by lengthy complaints about community standards, lack of discipline, and the dangers of ignoring rules. Comments poured in, some supporting her, some ridiculing her obsession. One viral post even compared her to a tyrant, her image becoming both a cautionary tale and a source of amusement to online viewers. The couple, always documenting in real time, began sharing their own videos online, showing the absurdity of the situation. Suddenly, the standoff was no longer just a suburban spat. It had an audience numbering in the thousands. With public attention mounting, the HOA doubled down. A representative arrived unannounced one morning to inspect the pool. They measured, documented, and issued another notice. Every detail was meticulously recorded. The exact height of the inflatable walls, the color scheme, the arrangement of toys. The young couple, fully aware they were being watched, filmed the entire inspection, creating a record of absurdity that would fuel later acts of revenge. It was a game of endurance, patience, and strategy, where humor became a weapon against petty authoritarianism. The tension spilled over into pranks that escalated the stakes. Neighbors reported mysterious changes around the pool. The flamingo sometimes appeared in the middle of the HOA president's yard. Rubber ducks floated along the edges of sidewalks, and water balloons mysteriously landed in the driveway of the neighborhood Karen. No one could prove who was responsible, but everyone suspected the young couple. The subtle chaos unsettled the HOA and sent the neighborhood Karen into a frenzy, creating a public spectacle of frustration and desperation. Every act of retaliation, every prank, was calculated for maximum effect. The couple didn't engage in destructive behavior. They were clever, precise, and theatrical. A small speaker played soft, whimsical music near the pool, accompanied by bubbles that rolled toward the street. They staged elaborate photo setups showing the flamingo wearing tiny sunglasses or floating among beach toys, each scene carefully documented and shared online. The absurdity was impossible to ignore, turning a petty HOA feud into an entertaining saga that neighbors couldn't resist following. The media attention, initially local, began spreading. Clips of the inflatable pool standoff appeared on TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube channels specializing in HOA drama. Online communities debated the legitimacy of the fines, the obsessive behavior of the neighborhood Karen, and the brilliance of the young couple's resistance. The story became viral, attracting viewers far beyond the quiet cul-de-sac. What started as a small backyard disagreement now had national visibility, transforming the couple into unlikely symbols of suburban defiance. Even the most neutral neighbors began picking sides. Some quietly supported the couple, offering moral support, free rubber ducks, or playful decorations to enhance the spectacle. Others clung to the HOA's side, fearing repercussions or genuinely agreeing with the rules. The street had become divided, the invisible line marked by the presence or absence of the small inflatable pool. Every day brought new tension, new notes, and new opportunities for clever retaliation. By the time the second week arrived, the couple realized they had the upper hand, but the war was far from over. The neighborhood Karen had underestimated their patience, creativity, and willingness to document every move. With cameras rolling, fines mounting, and social media attention intensifying, the young couple began to plan their next phase. A jaw-dropping act of revenge designed not only to embarrass the HOA and the neighborhood Karen but to cement their status as the undefeated champions of suburban absurdity as the sun set on the cul-de-sac, casting long, dramatic shadows over the bright blue pool and its small pink flamingo. The neighborhood was silent, tense, and anticipating. Little did the HOA or the neighborhood Karen know the stage was set. The next act of the suburban drama would be bold, spectacular, and unforgettable. forever changing the way the street viewed authority, compliance, and the power of a $20 inflatable pool. By the third week, the tension on the cul-de-sac had reached a fever pitch. The inflatable pool, once a simple summer accessory, had become an epic symbol of rebellion. Social media followers had grown into a small army of spectators, eager to witness the latest episode of suburban absurdity. The young couple had become masters of patience and strategy, carefully timing every move to maximize both humor and impact. Their plan for ultimate revenge was no longer just about defiance. It was about spectacle, justice, and unforgettable humiliation. It began with preparation. The backyard, once just a place for water and toys, had transformed into a stage for mischief. A hidden camera was set up in the fence, ensuring that every reaction could be documented. Inflatable flamingos multiplied, rubber ducks gathered in strategic clusters, and subtle props appeared overnight. Tiny warning signs and mock HOA notices crafted with meticulous precision. Everything was designed to provoke, amuse, and, most importantly, record the escalating panic of the neighborhood Karen and the HOA. The first act of the grand plan unfolded on a Saturday morning. The couple inflated the pool to its maximum size, filling it with water and an assortment of colorful balls and toys. But this time, they added a twist. Waterproof speakers streaming whimsical, carnival-style music, creating a bizarre and playful atmosphere. A giant inflatable dragon, dressed in a makeshift HOA uniform, floated in the center, complete with a small sign reading, "Your rules don't float here." The scene was absurd, brilliant, and irresistible for cameras as expected. The neighborhood Karen arrived within minutes. Her horror was palpable. She paused at the edge of the street, clipboard in hand, jaw tight, documenting every detail with frantic energy. Her attempts to remain authoritative faltered as the sheer ridiculousness of the display overwhelmed her. The flamingos bobbed in perfect formation, the music blared, and the giant dragon seemed to taunt her personally. Cameras hidden throughout the yard captured every flinch, every gasp, and every frantic scribble on her clipboard. The spectacle escalated further when the couple released small water balloons filled with colored liquid, strategically tossed to land near the edges of the driveway. The neighborhood Karen flinched, retreating as if under siege, her authority evaporating in real time. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds and fences, some snapping videos secretly, others laughing openly. The story, once a minor HOA disagreement, had transformed into a full-blown suburban circus. Within hours, the videos had gone viral. Clips of the inflatable pool, the dragon, the flamingos, and the panicked Karen were shared across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Online communities erupted with laughter, memes, and commentary. The HOA's authority seemed trivial, laughable even, in the face of such theatrical defiance. The couple's careful documentation had turned the tables completely. They were no longer just homeowners. They were directors of a viral social experiment exposing the absurdities of petty bureaucratic control. The neighborhood Karen, however, was not done. She demanded a formal meeting, insisting that the couple remove the pool immediately and pay escalating fines for continued violations. But the couple was ready. They arrived with a full presentation. Timelines, photographs, videos, and screenshots of every petty complaint and surveillance attempt. The irony was undeniable, the evidence undeniable, and the audience, both local and online, cheering for every perfectly timed reveal. The HOA board, faced with public humiliation, realized that the couple had mastered the optics of victory. The resolution came not with confrontation but with spectacle. The couple staged a final, symbolic act. A massive inflatable banner, floating above the pool, reading, "Suburban Freedom, $20 well spent." It was a declaration, a victory, and a warning to anyone who might challenge them in the future. The neighborhood Karen could only watch, defeated yet unwilling to surrender entirely, as cameras captured the climax of the saga. Every flinch, every frustrated scribble, every desperate attempt to regain control was preserved for posterity. And for a global audience laughing along at the absurdity and the aftermath, fines were quietly reduced. The HOA reluctantly acknowledged the couple's compliance with certain minor rules, and the streets slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet nothing would ever be quite the same. The inflatable pool had transformed the quiet cul-de-sac into a legendary site of suburban rebellion. Neighbors whispered, children played near the pool without fear of HOA interference, and the young couple became local heroes of defiance, known for turning petty bureaucracy into viral entertainment. The moral of the saga was clear. Sometimes, it's not about destruction or chaos. It's about creativity, patience, and the willingness to embrace absurdity. The inflatable pool, the flamingos, the rubber ducks, and the dragon had done what no amount of fines or threats could. They had exposed the humor, obsession, and vulnerability of those who wield power without perspective. By the end of summer, the inflatable pool was retired gracefully, stored in the garage for another season. Yet the legend lived on. Videos continued to circulate online, memes were created, and discussions of HOA tyranny versus creative resistance spread far beyond the street. The neighborhood Karen, though still vigilant, could never undo the spectacle, and the couple's strategic patience had cemented their place in suburban folklore. And so, what began as a simple $20 inflatable pool had escalated into a full-scale neighborhood war, culminating in an unforgettable display of ingenuity, patience, and viral revenge. The lesson was clear for anyone daring to tangle with petty authority. Never underestimate the power of creativity, humor, and documentation. In the end, the pool floated proudly, the flamingos remained ever watchful, and suburban peace was restored, on the couple's terms.